This is an ABC News special report. Now reporting, David Muir.
Good afternoon. We're coming back on the air at this hour with new reporting on these U.S.-led airstrikes now underway. Retaliation against Iranian-backed militants after the deadly drone attack on 3 U.S. soldiers at a remote base in Jordan. I want to bring in Louis Martinez, who leads our Pentagon reporting team, and he's at the Pentagon. Louis, what more have we learned about this U.S.-led effort now underway?
David, we've learned that there are from 4 officials that there have been the start of retaliatory airstrikes in both Iraq and in Syria. This is in response to the deadly incident in Jordan at that base known as Tower 22, where 3 Army reservists lost their lives and as many as 47 others were injured. We understand that these strikes are targeting areas that belong to some of these militia groups that were believed to be responsible for those attacks that was carried out by a drone against the Tower 22 base that led to so many of those casualties. But the officials telling us that the strikes are underway, hitting multiple targets, and this is something that's going to be going on for multiple days. That's something that we've been hearing from officials throughout the week. And another thing is that this is going to be multi-tiered. One of the things that we've heard is that, yes, Iraq and Syria were definitely on the table, as possibly as well as Yemen, where Houthi militants have been striking at commercial shipping lanes off in the Red Sea and in the Gulf of Aden.
And Louis, I know you and the team were reporting earlier from the Pentagon on initial airstrikes that were confirmed there at the Pentagon. You have learned additional reporting on that they were hitting some of the same areas, some of the same militia groups being looked at, perhaps targeted by the U.S. Unclear if that was the tip of the spear in this U.S.-led attack or who, in fact, was behind the initial strikes that took place just moments before this all officially began.
That's right, David. We are told that there were airstrikes underway in various locations that are affiliated with some of these groups that have carried out these attacks against U.S. bases in Iraq and Syria. And it is unclear who carried out the airstrikes. Spoken to multiple Pentagon officials who will not disclose who was behind these airstrikes. But the reality is that there were airstrikes that were carried out in these locations, as you said, that targeted similar areas, similar towns, similar areas affiliated with those militia groups that are responsible for the more than 160 now, 65 attacks against U.S. bases in Iraq and Syria.
Louis Martinez at the Pentagon. Louis, thanks, and stay with us here. I want to bring in our Chief Global Affairs Correspondent, Martha Raddatz, reporting from Jordan, as she has been for several nights here. And Martha, what more are you learning at this hour about this broader U.S.-led airstrike, how long this could last, and the internal debate that led to how to go forward and which option the president chose?
There was a lot of internal debate, and the fear is still there, David. They want this to be very significant, but there are some in the Pentagon who say this will probably deter these militant groups, and others worry that it will trigger an escalation because these strikes, according to officials, will be different. It will be a much more powerful show of force than we have seen over the last months and weeks. Going after the Houthis, going after these militant groups. Those were really just storage areas and things that didn't seem to make much of a difference. You and I have talked so many times over recent weeks that deterrence simply hasn't worked. But this time, you had a loss of life. They had to respond in a different way. And they have said for months that if an American was killed, that was a red line. So what I believe you will see, according to officials I have spoken to, is missiles into Syria, missiles into Iraq, and possibly into Yemen as well, because all of those groups have been attacking U.S. forces. As Louis said, there have been more than 165 attacks on U.S. forces. Now, I was up in the area in Jordan, in a very similar area to where Tower 22 is. There are very remote locations. Let's just remind people that that drone approached, that the air defense systems and people there thought it might be a U.S. surveillance drone, so that drone kept on going. They do believe that drone was launched from Iraq, so that is one big reason for strikes in Iraq. But Syria, there are Iranian assets in Syria. There are IRGC, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, inside Syria. They have not and will not, as far as we know from U.S. officials, strike in Iran itself, although you have heard again and again U.S. officials saying these are Iran-backed groups. Iran is responsible, but that was a red line to Joe Biden. He had misgivings about going actually after Iran because he feared, as many do, that the war would escalate.
Martha Raddatz reporting on the president's concerns there about any kind of direct action against Iran, which is why we're hearing so far these U.S.-led strikes have been on Iraq and in Syria against these Iranian-backed militias that have been firing these drones throughout the region in recent weeks. And of course, the president deciding to act in this way after the deaths of 3 American soldiers. I want to show you images at home before we go to Mary Bruce here. A short time ago, the president and the first lady welcoming home the remains of those 3 soldiers. The dignified transfer, a very solemn ceremony. Sergeant William Rivers, Sergeant Breonna Moffett, and Sergeant Kennedy Sanders. And as we have reported here, Sanders and Moffett posthumously promoted to sergeant. We saw the president, the first lady there, the defense secretary there. And I want to bring in Mary Bruce. Mary, as you know, we showed that phone call between the president and the parents of these families and the soldiers who did not survive this. Of course, talking about the loss of his own son who served this country. And again, the president, this White House, very concerned about the potential for wider conflict here, but making it very clear that he was going to seek justice for these families.
And David, there is no more powerful reminder of the weight of these kinds of decisions than what we saw today. The president there witnessing the dignified transfer of the remains of these 3 U.S. service members killed in this horrific strike in Amman, Jordan. And we know that this is a decision that weighed heavily on the president, that he carefully considered his options, meeting twice with his national security team this week, huddling in the Situation Room, going over and poring over all of the options. This is the scenario that the White House had been hoping to avoid for months, as we have seen U.S. service members come under these relentless attacks from these Iranian-backed militants. And the president has faced a lot of pressure to strike Iran directly, something, as Martha noted, we know the president has deep misgivings about. But they made very clear that this strike was fundamentally different. And so the response is going to be different, too. It is why we have been told to expect multiple strikes, multiple targets over several days to play out. The president trying to strike that really difficult balance of sending a strong message, responding in a way that will finally, he hopes, stop these attacks without widening this war, without starting another conflict, David.
Mary Bruce, Martha Raddatz, Louis Martinez at the Pentagon. My thanks to all 3 of you. Again, U.S.-led airstrikes now underway. The retaliation for those deadly drone attacks that killed 3 American soldiers so far. The U.S.-led strikes targeting locations in both Iraq and in Syria. Our coverage will continue on ABC News Live, abcnews.com. And, of course, I'll be back here with the entire team for World News Tonight. I'm David Muir in New York. I'll see you then.
This has been a special report from ABC News.
Hi everyone, George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.